Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored and happy to be here. My name is Kaye-De-Ann Rattray, and I'm currently based in Maryland. So today I'd like to talk to you about the stories we tell ourselves from burnout to beliefs. You see, I spent years helping people heal their minds. I could diagnose people, I intervene, I could even soothe them. I thought I understood trauma. I thought I understood resilience. In fact, I thought I understood myself. And then one day, without warning, my own story came down collapsing. You see, burnout did not knock on the door. It did not ask for permission. It just barged in. It simply walked in and quietly erased my edges and left a version of myself that I didn't recognize. You see, as a psychiatric nurse practitioner, my whole identity was built on helping people. But suddenly, I couldn't help my own self. I was exhausted, I was empty, I was numb. But it wasn't the kind of tiredness that sleep could fix. No, this was deep down to the soul, the one that I felt like all I wanted to do was disappear. And while that burnout was happening, something else was also happening, something even darker. I found myself in a relationship with a person who seemed charming and confident and emotionally attuned until the mask slipped off. The manipulation was so subtle at first. The gaslighting was precise. The control was disguised as concern. And when I tried to leave, he used the family court system as a weapon, a way to continue the abuse with legal papers instead of his fist. It was an abuse of power so invisible that even I, with all my training and struggles, I didn't recognize it. And here's the part that hurts the most. I knew better. I did. But I couldn't do better. You see, because intelligence doesn't immune you from manipulation, and credentials, it doesn't shield you from trauma. And no amount of clinical expertise can protect you from a story that tells you you are not enough. I remember one night sitting on the floor. My body was so exhausted, my head was spinning, and my soul was fractured. And I kept thinking, how did I end up here? How did I lose myself inside a story that I didn't even write? And then something happened that changed everything. a question came to me. It's a question that I've asked countless patients, and that was, whose story are you living? For the first time in a long time, I was quiet enough to hear the answers. I wasn't living my story. No, I wasn't. I was living the story of my burnout. I was living the story of a narcissist who convinced me that chaos was normal. I was living the story of systems that rewarded self sacrifice and they called it strength. I was living the story of a world that teaches helpers to save everyone but themselves. And that night, sitting on the floor, I made a decision. I would rewrite my story before the end was written for me. But rewriting a story is not glamorous. It's not. You see, it didn't just happen with a spark of epiphanies. I didn't put on a playlist and life just suddenly became better. It happened slowly, very painfully, and often very quietly. It happened the moment you tell the truth. It happens when you tell yourself the truth. For me, it began with a journal. I wrote on the sentence, I am allowed to take up space. Every morning I wrote it again and again. I'm allowed to take up space until the pen got a mind of its own and it started writing other things like, I am enough. I deserve safety. I deserve kindness. I deserve rest. I deserve love that doesn't require me to disappear. Storytelling became my medicine. I started noticing the narrative of other people, the things that they carried. Some of it was hidden behind diagnoses, behind feeling burnt out, behind conflict, behind just trying to survive. I began to see that so many of us are living stories we didn't choose. Stories inherited in our childhood, stories shaped by trauma, stories enforced by culture, stories whispered by abusers, stories rewarded by workplaces, stories that tell us we must be everything to everyone except ourselves. And I began teaching something new, something I actually just learned. Your story is not who you are, it is who you were taught to be. And you can rewrite it. The real healing didn't come from fighting a narcissist. It didn't come from escaping burnout. It came from one courageous act, reclaiming authorship. I stopped being the caretaker for everyone else's needs. I stopped trying to earn love and started practicing self respect. I set boundaries, not as walls or barriers, but as a declaration of worth. I stopped explaining myself to people who only listen to win. I stopped shrinking to fit inside someone else's comfort. And slowly, piece by piece, I came back home to myself. I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me. See, the idea of burnout doesn't mean that you're a failure. It's actually data. It's your body saying, hold up, wait a minute. The story you're living is not sustainable. And narcissistic abuse? Yeah, let's talk about that. It thrives in your silence. It thrives when your story has been edited so many times by someone else that you no longer trust yourself or your own voice. But the moment you reclaim your voice, the abuse lose its power. Because here's what I've learned. You don't slay a narcissist by fighting them. You slay them by healing yourself, by becoming someone that cannot be controlled, that cannot be confused, that cannot be diminished. Healing is not about erasing your past. Healing is about reclaiming the pen. So let me ask you, What story have you been living? And who taught it to you? And what if you were allowed? What if you were allowed today, at this moment, to rewrite it? Maybe your story taught you to be small. Rewrite it. Maybe your story taught you that burnout is noble. Rewrite it. Maybe your story taught you that love requires pain. Rewrite it. Maybe your story taught you that survival is the best that you could hope for. Rewrite it. You are the author, and you always were. And when you finally write a story where you are enough, when you really believe that you are enough, the whole world rises to meet the person you were always meant to be. Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful. Wow. Katie, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your story with us today.
Welcome. Thank you
I
for
am
having me.
hearing an echo. Do you hear it?
I don't.
It's very strange. I can hear myself coming in twice. I hope that's not, if you
You
don't
sound,
hear it, maybe it's just on my side.
yeah, you sound crystal clear on my end.
Okay. Now, let's go back to that pivotal moment in time when you realize that you had burnt out. A lot of people don't realize it until it's a crisis. What were the symptoms? What were the signs that made you realize you were in trouble?
Yeah. The signs of burnout includes an exhaustion. Like I shared in part of my story, it's a different type of exhaustion that could not be remedied with 8, 10, or 12 hours of sleep. It was a diminished interest in things that I once loved, cynicism, just a feeling like life is just heavy. And I kept going and I kept going, and the symptoms worsened. Even when I got a break, I felt burnout. Even when I was doing things that I once loved, I didn't feel better. It was beyond stress, it was something a lot more severe.
Now, what can women do to prevent getting to that point? A lot of times, the warning signs are there. What advice would you give women
Yeah.
to prevent themselves from getting there?
Yeah, I love that question. And I love that we're focusing, that we understand that it is a different advice for women. And the reason for that is that most women have been conditioned to sacrifice themselves. And in many ways, what that means is that you're turning off the warning signal that alerts you that something is wrong, because we were rewarded for that as a child. Oh, you're so good. That's so nice. Doing things that you didn't want to do. So I think for women, the first thing is to have an awareness of your needs, right? For you to
Yes.
not dismiss it and say, well, the kids need me. And no, I, something is not right. I'm going to give myself 5 minutes to check in with myself. Maybe they won't get the best dinner tonight,
Mhm.
because you don't have the energy. So they're going to get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? So the awareness and listening to yourself and recognizing, because we were conditioned for so long, that feeling such a shame and guilt for overriding our intuitive knowing that something is off may
Mhm.
show up, and that we must not take the feelings of guilt or shame and continue to suppress our physical and emotional symptoms that we've had enough, but to recognize that I'm doing something for myself, which is not what I've been taught, and this makes me feel shame. But there's nothing shameful in taking care of myself. In fact, it's an honor, because I'm teaching my family, my daughters, my legacy, that we need to take care of ourselves, because if I burn out, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's true. And it's for the next generation to see you as a role model,
Absolutely.
not being superwoman.
Yeah.
Now, I know you said that the hardest thing for most women, especially women of color, is learning to pause.
Mm.
Why do you believe stillness feels unsafe or uncomfortable for so many of us?
Well, I don't know how much time we have, but I hypothesize that many of us have been living in survival mode, given the history of Black and Brown women. We've been trained to survive, and when you're in a survival mode, your emotions are not priority. It's just being safe. It's just getting to the point. And the good thing is that we are the representation of what so many of our ancestors have wanted and are so proud of. But now we are tasked with this thing that no one taught us. What do we do
Mhm.
now? We've reached the top of the mountain. We're no longer just surviving. And what does that mean? Just
Mhm.
imagine years and years and generation. Do your best, keep going, never stop, be the best. And that's all you did. That's all you knew. So you just kept going with a broken leg, and now the race is over. That pain from years and years of ignoring is now to the forefront. Right. So I think that we as women haven't been taught, we haven't seen our mothers, our grandmothers, our grandmothers rest. We've seen them be strong, and strong meant living in survival mode. So this is new for us. This is
Wow.
new for us to pause and to deal with not just our own feelings, but so many of the feelings of those women that weren't expressed.
Yeah, that is so true. It's a generational thing, and at some point we have to break that curse, right?
Absolutely.
So, how does the cultural narrative of strength and hard work contribute to this chronic burnout, particularly in communities that have been socially conditioned to overperformance?
If I understood your question correctly, you said, how does this constant need of being strong contribute to burnout?
Yes.
Yes. A lot of times, it's very similar to what I've said, is that we've only known this, and there's nothing wrong with being strong. It's not the goal to get rid of strength and resilience. That's who we are. That's not
Mhm.
going anywhere. But to know that there's another side of us, there's a softer side. We don't have daylight all the time. The sun
Yeah.
goes down and the moon comes up, and it is our time to rest. So we don't say that the sun is bad and or the sun is good and the moon is bad. It works symbiotically. And I think that the only narrative that has been perpetuated, or the narrative that's mostly been perpetuated, is to work, work, grind, grind, grind. And the goal now isn't to say that's a bad narrative. It is necessary to work hard. It is necessary sometimes to keep on going even when you're tired, but there must be place for rest. There must be place for pause. There must be a place for rejuvenation, for
Yeah.
you to be able to connect with yourself.
Yes, it's actually imperative. It's our only way of survival.
Absolutely.
Now, psychologically, what happens to the body when someone is burnt out? And what are the early signs that people tend to overlook or normalize?
Yeah. So one of the things that happens with burnout is certain hormones elevate, particularly cortisol. That is the stress hormone. And
Mm.
one of the very early signs that people tend to overlook is changes in your sleep pattern, right? So sometimes it's not always going to be you're getting less sleep, but it might be worse quality. So maybe you're still getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, but now you're getting up 3 or 4 times. It's harder to fall asleep. Even after getting 7 to 8 hours, it feels like you got no sleep. Your body is still activated. It hasn't had an opportunity to rest. And we need to rest so that our cells can rejuvenate, our minds can rest. Certain levels, like our cortisol levels, should be going down at night. And if it's elevated, it's going to produce, cortisol is a stress hormone, so that
Yeah.
you may gain weight, definitely gain weight. People have medical condition. It's more inflammation in the body, and different inflammation can lead to different dis-ease or disorders.
Yes. And that inflammation is an experience that many people don't even see coming. Now, healing doesn't come from more effort, right? It comes from surrender.
Mm.
How does pre-restorational healing look like from your clinical and lived experience?
Mhm. That's a good question. And I want to make sure that people understand that healing is not a one size fit all. When I'm
Mhm.
working with a client, I'm getting to know that client and seeing what are the things that drain them and what are the things that fuels them, and seeing how we could incorporate that. I want to understand their story and the narrative that they've been told so that we can debunk and change some of that. For
Mhm.
me, like I said in the story that I shared, journaling has been such a very pivotal component of my life. When I was younger, I used to write poems. In growing up in my environment, which was a very traumatic environment, self expression wasn't
Mhm.
allowed. And I discovered poetry that I can wrap my pain up and nobody knew that it was about me. So, from a very young age, writing was something that was very therapeutic, and it transitioned into journals. I have stacks and stacks of journals. For me, being in nature is another thing. And
Right.
another thing that's very important for me, and I share this with my clients, is allowing ranges of emotions. Many times when we think about healing, we say that we identify it as feeling good. Think
Mm.
about when you've broken your leg, it has to feel worse, right?
Yeah.
Before it gets better. And allowing yourself to be in the space where you can honor anger in a healthy way, sadness in a healthy way, as opposed to saying, I shouldn't have it, because all of your emotions are part of you. And if you can love and embrace and listen to it, then you allow it to be expressed and it no longer has to take the range and the front row seat, and then healing gets its opportunity. So I encourage people to really spend some time in getting to know themselves. And if you're unable to do this on your own, find a professional. If you can't afford a professional, be in community with people with other women that love and care for you and that can support you along your journey.
Now, let's talk a little bit about our emotions. I read a book that said something like, your emotions are like your children. When they come to you, bring them close to you, give them your attention. A lot of us try and resist those emotions. And the more we push them back, the stronger they get, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that philosophy I love. It's part of the internal family system, IFS modality, which is a form of therapy. And the way I explain it in layman's term is to think of a portrait of yourself. So imagine a portrait of yourself, but it's broken up into these small little pieces, right? That creates the whole version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All of those pieces are necessary. If we take one piece out, the picture doesn't look complete. So
Yeah,
we don't want to eliminate any parts of us. We want to embrace it because it is those pieces, even though the world may see them as not good feelings, that makes us so beautiful, that makes us so unique, that makes us human.
I love that. Now, you run workshops and you support your clients in different types of ways. What are the most common patterns that you see amongst burnout high achievers? And how do these patterns differ for women of color?
Yeah. I think that the pattern that I consistently see across the board is a wounded child. It is a child that was wounded and they have learned behaviors that allow them to get their version of love. And oftentimes that meant either self sacrificing or being the best at something or being in charge or taking care of other people. And I think
Mhm.
that the difference that I have learned with women of color is that they don't always have a safe space to be vulnerable. So they may
Yeah.
have very similar experiences to other cultures, to other women, but they get an opportunity to be soft. they're not always in in survival mode. So
Right.
this cycle is almost 24/7 for them. And somehow the vulnerability often with women of color elicits great shame, great embarrassment and great guilt. And I don't typically always see that in other women.
It's interesting. Now, I'm going to teleport you back through a thought experiment with my last two questions. In the one, we're going to go back to the younger you. If you could go back and give yourself three nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those three nuggets of wisdom be?
Oh my goodness. I would say, girl, you were meant to stand out. Don't try to fit in. You're not meant to be. I would say that you are good enough. You are enough. And I think the other thing that I would definitely want to say to myself is, I love you just as you are. You deserve to be loved unconditionally. And I think if the younger me could hear that, I wonder what me now would be like. And these are the messages that I try to share with my daughter and all younger and older women as well.
Absolutely love that. Last question is futuristic this time, and I'm going to teleport you to go and meet the 90-year-old you. She is sitting in her rocking chair, surrounded by her children, her grandchildren, whoever's with you at the end. If we could go into the future to go and meet this wise woman who has led you up until this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet her?
I would say thank you. I would say thank you for keep on going. Thank you for showing up for yourself. Thank you for resting. Thank you for crying. Thank you for being strong. Thank you for being weak. Thank you for living the life to the fullest. Thank you.
And thank you for empowering so many other women to do the same. I think we have to throw that in as well, because with your work, with your vocation, your profession, you're doing this for others as well. So thank you so much for coming online and reminding us all to slow down, remember self love, focus on being you and getting the rest that you need. Now, is there anything else I should have asked you and I didn't? Or some parting thoughts you might want to share with our community?
Well, first of all, I too want to first say thank you for creating platforms like this. I think that this is so necessary, and I encourage other people to share their story on your platform, to your community, to yourself. And I implore you to make sure that we're getting to the end of the year and use this opportunity to rewrite your story, whether
Mm.
you are the younger version of me or the 90-year-old you or me in the future. You get to rewrite your story. So I think you've asked all the questions, and I just want to thank you for empowering myself and other women out here to share their story with no sense of shame, just with pride and authority.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to help take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So if you know a woman who is going through burnout, if you personally are feeling that you have just outdone yourself and you need support and help, don't try and do this alone. There are women out there who will help you get your health back on track. Reach out. We've got this amazing woman who has come to share her story. Reach out to her through social media, get the support that you need. I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody, with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thanks again, Katie, for the interview.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story. Wonderful.